Welcome into Clippers Talk, which is now 7 days a week here on the YouTube side. I'm Adam Osland. Good to be back with you guys. Did a 2-hour long Clippers Talk live yesterday, answering a lot of questions, bringing you post-game quotes from their Friday night game in Seattle, taking on the Portland Trailblazers. Talked a lot about Kai Jones, talked a lot about Derrick Jones Jr., and today we have a couple of special guests. It's a Sunday, so I know these guys' schedule. I know when I have an opportunity to bring them in. It's the guys from Talking Ship, Matt Matawaran and Brandon Marcus here on a Clippers Talk Live. Boys, how we doing?
Oh, we're doing good, man. Thanks for having us back.
Yeah, Clippers Talk Live. Brandon Marcus, Adam Oslin. 8 days a week. We're doing it. How the heck are you guys?
8 days a week like the Beatles. Let's go. Yeah, we never stop here. So we'll get some questions and comments for you guys coming in. But I was listening to your show earlier this week, which made me think of bringing you guys on. Couple things to clear up here. All right. I want to give you the nice intro and then butter you up before I stick the knife in, I guess. But it was said that I brought up, little old me brought up that Kelly Olynyk was a trade possibility. I was responding to someone on the live who brought that up before I completely shot it down, saying the Toronto Raptors have no reason to trade for PJ Tucker with Kelly Olynyk. I just want to make that clear here as we start things off.
I believe I saw your name associated with Kelly Olynyk, and so guilty by association is what the phrase is called, Adam Osland.
Look, context is another part of this, all right? Look, I had to respond. Somebody brought up Kelly Olynyk. I don't think Toronto's doing that. There's no reason to do that. I don't know if there are any good names out there for PJ Tucker. So we could start with this because I heard you guys talk about it a ton. I don't know how this gets done unless you're packaging him with other players and possibly a second-round pick. Other players like maybe Bones Highland, maybe, I don't know, Amir Coffey. I don't want to see that happen. It depends on who you get back, but somebody brought this up the other day saying Amir is going to be a long-time Clipper. It's like, well, hold on a second. They did actually trade him before last season started to the Boston Celtics, and the trade was nixed in that three-way with the, the Washington Wizards. So I don't think he's untouchable, especially because how good Jordan Miller has looked. What's best case scenario, I guess, for getting rid of PJ Tucker and moving on here, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this on our pod and the fact that in order to get rid of PJ, like you said, you're going to have to get rid of an asset. And at this point, where the Clippers are as a team, you don't see them finishing as a top 4 team in the West. And because of that, you want to hold on to all your assets. And that, of course, means second round picks also, because hell, the Clippers are busy swapping picks left and right in the first round. And so if you're going to have to give up any sort of pick, even if it's a second round pick, because if you expect to be bad, don't forget that second round pick might be pretty high up in that second round and may be pretty decent. And so because of that, I'm not giving up any picks. You mentioned Bones Highland. Sure, if someone wants to take Bones along with PJ Tucker, I'm fine with it. Amir Coffey, I'm also fine with it. Amir Coffey has shown some glimpses, but here's the thing, and you've talked about it, Adam, a ton. You talk about guys like Kai Jones. You talk about guys like Jordan Miller. You talk about guys like Kevin Porter Jr. There are only so many roster spots. And not only that, only so many playing time spots. I mean, that's 9 to 10 guys that we're going to see from Ty Lue. And at some point, you can get rid of other dudes to get playing time for those young players, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But if you want to see those younger players actually get on the floor, you got to get rid of people that are in front of them. And that's like Amir Coffey or a Bones Highland. Who knows where he is in the pecking order, but that's what you got to do.
It's a good point. You can't have it both ways. People talk about wanting to win this season while also playing the young guys. Those two things typically don't go together, and you got to make some tough decisions if you're going to get run for some of the young guys. Matt, how do you feel about your guy Pajamas?
Well, Pajamas has played his last game as a Clipper, whether he stays on the team this year or if those pajamas get folded up and shipped off somewhere else. Either way, he's not playing again. But I just don't see the appeal, even for any other team. What are they going to give up for a guy like Pajamas? He's clearly washed. I mean, if it's all it is an expiring deal, then he can be an expiring deal for the Clips. I mean, what sort of value can you get back? You would, of course, have to throw in a Bones, a Coffee, some kind of future pick. There's no way that Pajamas is is demanding any sort of value from anybody. So it's kind of a tough situation. I don't exactly know what the stretch provision rules are off the top of my head. I don't know that he's eligible, and if he is, would the Clippers even want to do that and kind of hurt their cap even more going down the line? I don't see it. So it'd be nice to move PJ. I just don't know how it's going to happen that would just ultimately benefit the Clips.
Now, there is one guy that I brought up that I feel like could benefit
Kelly
the
Olynyk.
Clippers.
Kidding.
Not Kelly Olynyk, son of a bitch. Grant Williams, only because he's been shifted around a little bit, and he still has 3 more years on his contract, and the Charlotte Hornets seem to be in this perpetual rebuild. They may not want to pay the $12 million, $13 million he is due per year over the next 3 seasons. I've been a fan of his because of his switchability and the ability to guard up is what I liked about him in Boston. And he also shot the 3 ball pretty well. This is someone who could come in and conceivably play the 4 to move Kawhi back to the 3. What are your guys' thoughts on Grant Williams, Brandon?
He's too good. He's too good. I don't. It goes back to what Matt was just saying. Like, if you get rid of pajamas, are you actually going to get a decent player back? And why would you? The only reason, I think it's exactly what you just said, Adam, would be someone that has more years on their contract. And so I think he's too good. But at the same time, listen, I thought Robert Covington and Norman Powell were too good to trade away from Portland to give back what the Clippers gave back. So some teams just think differently. And if that's the case, yeah, I would absolutely take a guy like Grant Williams. I think that he was solid in Boston, and I think he would be a really nice fit with the Clippers because you need more space, got more shooting, and that can spread the floor in space. And I think that Grant Williams can do that.
Matt, are you a Grant Williams fan? Do you think it would still take Bones Highland along with PJ or maybe a second to get this done with the Charlotte Hornets, even with Grant Williams' contract?
So you can see behind me, it's blank. Later today, I'm having a friend come over. I was going to put my Grant Williams poster up. I wanted it for the live show, but unfortunately, timing being what it is with a young daughter, I couldn't do it. I do actually agree, though, that I don't know if Grant Williams is too good. He's too good in the sense that I just don't understand why Charlotte would want to do it. Even if you're getting off a couple extra years of a contract, I think it would require like a 2nd round pick or something. Like, you got to sweeten the deal a little bit if you're getting somebody like that. So, and then Grant Williams, conversely, coming over to the Clippers, it's great that he can guard up and he can shoot the 3 ball a little bit. But it's like, to what end do we pay a couple of extra years for Grant Williams? Is that necessarily a big boon for the team? Is it helping down the line? I'm not quite sure.
I'm a fan, but it was weird what happened with the Dallas Mavericks. I thought that was a very good move when they brought him in, and most of the numbers said they were worse with him on the floor. And obviously they bring in PJ Washington from Charlotte. They bring in Daniel Gafford. They get to the finals. But Grant Williams is a 38% 3-point shooter in his career on decent volume. Like, for a guy that can play the floor and spread the floor, which is something everybody talks about when you're going to have a guy at the power forward position in place of Kawhi Leonard, to me, he could fit. But do you want to commit that much money for that long? Because obviously those $13 million coming in the summer of 2026 are going to take up some of the cap room for the Clippers. If they are going big game hunting then and trying to bring in Luka Doncic or SGA, we'll see. I think they're long shots considering the teams that are on right now, and they could have contract extensions before summer of 2026. But it does seem like a real plan is in place to really reload in a couple of years from now, and Grant Williams and his contract may not fit into that timeline. But I just don't know. Yeah.
Can I bring up another Williams? What about Robert Williams from
He's
the
hurt
Blazers?
again.
From the
Like, he's
Blazers,
hurt
who we just
again.
played. But yeah, he is hurt again. But if we're looking at this Clippers defensive sort of roster that they're putting together right now, I mean, he could slide in pretty easily as a backup if, of course, he's healthy, which he never is.
And
the contract seems to make sense. But
yeah, the contract. The only issue is that with that one, Matt, is that why would Portland want him? I mean, why would PJ Tucker make any sense whatsoever in Portland? Because he's end up being in a pretty crappy situation again. I mean, it'd be great to have a guy like Robert Williams, because you know why he makes sense is because the Clippers obviously are looking for that backup big man. Whether Kai Jones is that dude or Mo Bamba, who knows? But you have other dudes who are ahead of these guys anyways that are playing. Robert Williams is more of a stash candidate type of dude, and then you can play him in the second half of the season. So he makes sense. The thing with Grant Williams is that he's not old. I mean, he's only been in the league for what, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the 37%. It's not just that he's 37% shooting at him. He's 37% consistently. It's not like he's had 1 year of 41, another year of 33. Like it's 37, 37.5, 37.6. You go, there's a year of 41%. Like he's been really good consistently. And so that's why it would make sense on a team like this.
Yeah, both good points. I see what you're saying with Robert Williams because he does have 2 more years left on his contract. So maybe they see PJ Tucker's is expiring after this season and Robert Williams isn't going to play for us till maybe the second half of this year because he's hurt again. I loved Robert Williams with Boston. That guy was a dog and sacrificed some of his health by trying to get them a championship against the Golden State Warriors back in 2022.
And you know, another thing about Adam is that I would kind of trust the way the Celtics draft and actually groom players. And so you look at dudes that have gone through Boston, a guy like Robert Williams, Grant Williams, Malcolm Brogdon. All these guys have gone through Boston. And if they're good enough for Boston, Kelly Olynyk, if they're good enough for Boston, then it might make sense for a team like the Clippers to grab a guy who has had that experience on a very good coaching staff and a very good team as well.
Yeah, it's a fair point. So we bring up the backup center position. Nice transition there, Matt, to bringing up Robert Williams. Right now, it's Kai Jones who has the spot only because Mo Bamba is hurt. We don't know the severity of it. I tend to think it's not that big of a deal because he was going through, I don't know if it was half-speed stuff or just walkthroughs in Honolulu, but I saw him out there on the court. They were doing some half-court drills, but he has a bit of a knee injury. So it opened up this big opportunity for Kai Jones, who everybody in Clipper Nation, or many, were clamoring for over the last year or so. They got him. He's with the team. He's trying to get that last two-way. I do want to make the point, I don't think he's competing with Mo Bamba for the backup spot right now because he just has to get a two-way contract. Like, he's competing for the two-way, which he is going to get, of course, because it's a position of need. But you can't be competing with a guy who's on a minimum that can actually play in every game this season. When you're on a two-way, you can only play 41 games. But currently, right now, if they're playing a game today, it looks like he's the backup center. What have you guys liked from Kai Jones? And are you starting to feel the buzz around this young player and just his ability and how high his ceiling could be, Brandon?
Very DeAndre Jordan-esque in terms of the lobs and the jams and the blocks. I mean, it just seems like it's very DJ in terms of he's not a dude that's going to wow you outside the paint a whole lot, considering most of his shots have been dunks. And then he's getting all those blocks as well, playing solid defensively, and has shown his ability to be long. Very DJ in that matter. Can certainly be someone that, under the tutelage of Jeff Van Gundy, could be someone that could get even better defensively. And you wonder if you can do that combined with his ability to be that lob threat, then maybe it is somewhat like DeAndre Jordan and he can be someone that can be on your roster. But again, my issue is that when's he going to play? I mean, if Bamba's hurt, that's a different story. But if you want these guys like Kai Jones to get better and be a part of your team, there needs to be playing time and there needs to be a roster spot. And right now, I don't know if there is that. And that's the thing. You got to find the playing time for him. But I don't mind giving another young player a chance to do well. My fear is just the Clippers have not operated that way for the last 5+ years of Kawhi Leonard, where they just don't play a lot of youth. But what we've seen so far, sure, it's been solid. But we also saw Brandon Boston Jr. go nuclear at times during preseason or summer league. So I'd like to see it in the regular season as well against teams that actually are throwing out good defenders and good teams.
Matt, I know you love the nicknames. I branded him Sky Jones right before he got the game-winning alley-oop the other night in Seattle against the Portland Trail Blazers. And he has a penchant for getting up and being a vertical threat. While it's against backups and G Leaguers and two teams that could be two of the worst teams in the NBA the last couple of games with the Blazers and the Brooklyn Nets, there still is, a lot of potential there you can see from a guy who just started playing basketball at the age of 15 with Sky Jones or Kai Jones.
I mean, absolutely. Razor Ramon oozed machismo. He oozes talent, right? Like, you could just see it on the floor. You mentioned nicknames. A lot of people do call Mo Bamba Mambo number 5. Well, Kai Jones had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks in that game against the Blazers. I mean, the defense is absolutely there. Like Brandon was saying, sort of DeAndre Jordan-esque. And yeah, he can get up. Sky Jones, there is a lot of buzz building, and we do tend to fall in love with these big guys, right? That show out. You look at a Diabate the other year, or whatever the case may be. And I do think that Sky Jones was a first-round draft pick for a reason. He's obviously has a lot of potential. I actually really like the shaved head. I like the way he's looking right now. I think it's a good look. And he could certainly earn the backup center spot over Mo Bamba if those are the two that are ultimately battling for it. Because, I mean, what has Mo Bamba really done that would say that he's like solidified as a backup? So I think Sky Jones certainly has a chance, just ultimate energy. And he's obviously, he said he's there in preseason. It's against backups, but I would love to see him push it forward and just kind of build upon what we've seen so far, especially defensively, because we keep talking about it, and it's something I know I'm going to harp on all year, is the defensive prowess of this team.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair that the talent disparity isn't so wide because Mo Bamba hasn't exactly, fulfilled his potential being a top 10 pick in the draft with Orlando. He has played, though, 3 times as many minutes so far in the NBA compared to Kai Jones. And again, Kai Jones is going to be on a two-way. Like, he's going to get that last two-way spot. He can't play every game unless they end up converting it. And therefore, that 2-for-1 trade with PJ Tucker and maybe Bones or somebody else to bring in one guy to open up a roster spot could be huge for this team. But I like the energy Kai Jones is bringing, the spirit, the smile. Like, I think that stuff sometimes matters for a team that is trying to do more of a youth movement right now. For once, as Brandon Marcus was bringing up there a second ago, we haven't seen much of this in the 2-1-3 era. They need to. It's a necessity now with the new CBA. You cannot mess around anymore, not give young guys minutes to find out who they are. What happens if Brandon Boston, really has a big season this year with San Antonio? Everybody's going to be like, man, we let this guy go and we never gave him a fair shake. Would anyone be shocked if that happened, given how good he looked in the G League, Mr. 46 and all these things? We talk about other guys right now thriving in the G League, with Jordan Miller last season being top 8 scoring-wise, and that's another name that's out there. But I do want to address something because Brandon brought it up earlier. It's like Jeremy Mormon says, let's bring in Robert Covington. It's like, cool, we all love Rocco. Do you want the young guys to play or not?
Yep.
Do you want the young guys to play or not? What do you guys want to do this season? Because you can't have it both ways. It's going to be very difficult if you have all these veterans and you're trying to win and then also say, but sprinkle in the young guys a little bit. Like, I think this has to be a season where it might be a bridge year or a transition season. And Robert Covington is 35 or something like that. Like, they already have some older vets. They already have Nico Batum back. I don't know. It's a little bit frustrating, but I brought up Jordan Miller. Matt, we'll start with you this time. Mm-hmm. Jordan Miller, to me, is someone who, I keep using the phrase, it looks too easy for him right now against this level of competition. I want to see him against first units because he's clearing every hurdle along the way. G League, Summer League, preseason. And he got a little bit more run with the second unit, actually playing with James Harden some. I think it was late in the first quarter into the second last game on Friday night. Jordan Miller gets downhill with ease, and I think he's a much better rebounder than anybody's realized yet. He's physical out there. What have you liked from Jordan Miller?
I love everything you just said. And I do think that, so they always talk about at a certain point in a player's career where the game slows down. And it sort of seems like that's what's happened with Jordan Miller, where he's able to sort of not necessarily dictate the game and, bend the game to his will, like maybe a James Harden or somebody of that ilk can, but he is able to enforce his will. And I think his physicality, like you mentioned, his speed, and he just seems to have a very, very, very good court awareness, not only where other people are, but himself as well, and where to position and when to go downhill, when to drive, when to pass. I do think that, like I said, the game has slowed down for him a bit, and it's going to be interesting to see him and then guys like KPJ, who we mentioned last time we talked, and just these sort of who's going to step up and be somebody who takes that next step. And I certainly think Jordan Miller has the potential to be that guy.
Yeah,
Brandon,
It's funny because last year was all about Kobe Brown, right? And him getting minutes and being in the rotation. And can he be that guy that gets more minutes over a guy like PJ Tucker? And then now it's Jordan Miller because we saw what he did in the summer league and how great he was. He scored the basketball, and now he's doing it again here where he's scoring 15 plus points. And it's like, all right, cool. Give these guys a shot. But this goes back to what we were just talking about, Adam. Who's he playing for? When's he playing? Because I think the Clippers right now are in the middle of do we want to compete with James Harden and Kawhi Leonard? Or do we want to see Kai Jones and Jordan Miller and Kobe Brown? Because right now, I don't think you can compete while also playing those guys at the same time because you're going to have to go through those bumps and bruises with those younger players. And I just feel like right now, the Clippers need to figure out what they want as a team this season. What's the goal? Obviously, the goal for every season is to win the NBA title. Realistically, that's not happening with this team, especially if Kawhi Leonard's not ready and is only playing 50 plus games. That being said, if there are injuries, it opens up spots for these players. If you're losing by 20 plus in a game, it opens up playing time in the fourth quarter for these players. So I think you're just going to have to pick your spots in the first half of the season. And that's where I guess the first half is going to go is let's compete and see how far we can go. Maybe we surpass our expectations. And then the second half is more about seeing these guys like Jordan Miller and Kobe Brown and maybe Kai Jones. Like you will see the youth in the second half of the season because you remember you still don't want to get a bad pick because your pick is going to end up getting swapped most likely. And like you said last time on the podcast, in the show, it's crazy because you got the Rockets involved, you get the Clippers involved, you got the Thunder involved. I mean, you have all these teams involved in terms of swaps. You kind of want to end up being in the middle of the pack. And we'll see what the Clippers are able to do. But I think the first half, you'll try and compete, try and win as many games as possible. And the second half of the season will be about the youth movement.
Yeah, got to finish in front of the Houston Rockets, and they got to finish outside of having a top 10 pick because it's protected. Otherwise, it will be OKC taking the Clippers' first-round pick again this season. You mentioned what direction are they going in? And I think that's a really interesting question. And I agree with you. It could be no holds barred. They come out of the gates and they're trying to win every game and they're going all out to start the season. And then if things don't go their way, if Kawhi's not healthy enough, if James Harden wears down because he's having to do too much, then the second half is more that youth movement. Other people believe after what happened yesterday in a preseason game with Zach LaVine, they should trade for him right now as he had 24 points and went 5 of 5 from 3 in the first half for Chicago and looks spry, had a big dunk, looks healthy again. Do either of you guys believe that Zach LaVine should be a Clipper and they should be making a move for him now before the word gets out that he's back feeling good and therefore the amount they could offer, it's going to be a lot more because Chicago could drive up his price, I guess. Matt?
I think the price is already too high, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, what exactly is Chicago going to get from the Clips that is going to entice them to move LaVine? I mean, if it's really going to be, if LaVine is really going to have this bounce back season, or we're meant to believe that he's going to be a top tier player, there are probably 15 to 20 other teams that can offer something, I think, way better than what the Clippers could. So I don't really see it as a possibility. Brandon, I don't know about you.
Yeah, he's right. Who are you trading? All these games are fun to talk about, or in terms of, what do we do with this? Who are we going to trade for here? What are we going to do here? It's like, okay, but who are you giving up? Who are you giving up or who are you getting in a PJ Tucker deal that's going to make sense for the other team? Like it takes two teams to make a trade. And with Zach LaVine, I think the word's already out. You let a guy have a game like that. And in fantasy basketball, like we always talk about, Matt, there's buy low and there's sell high. And at this point, the buy low window is basically absolutely shut on Zach LaVine because he comes out and has a game like that. Sure, there's injury concerns, but who are you trading? Are you trading Jordan Miller, Kai Jones? Like, is that your package possibly to trade for Zach LaVine? And if that's the case, then here you are with PG basically gone, LaVine replacing him. And so it's the same team. It's just LaVine is replacing Paul George. Is that still good enough to do anything? No, probably not. And it's again, what do Clippers fans want? If you want to go for Zach LaVine, do you realistically think that your team's going to win the NBA title with Zach LaVine? And I think the answer is still no. And I just don't think that you're going to want to give up assets, very few that you even have left, to get a player like that. Would it be nice to have Zach LaVine on your team? Yes. Would you like win more games with Zach LaVine? Yes. Does it make sense for the future of this franchise? No.
Yeah, and they'd have to give up somebody that's making a chunk. Like Terrence Mann plus Norman Powell, some combination of those two guys. Can they get rid of PJ that way? The only reason it looked somewhat realistic was because there was a report earlier this summer that Chicago was so hell-bent on getting rid of his contract, where he's making almost $50 million over the next 3 seasons annually, that they were dangling a first-round pick out there. Now, it would probably be top 10 protected, but now with him looking this good, it's one game. He got really hot from the outside. He can do that, though. He can fill it up. He averaged 27 a couple of years ago. And that foot injury, I don't know. He looked bouncy. He looked springy. And he's only 29 years of age, but he has had knee issues, obviously doing his ACL. It only seems somewhat reasonable to me because of that report earlier this season. And Chicago, I don't think they're long for having Zach LaVine there at this point. But there's the other issue of, well, he can opt into his last year of this contract for $48 million during the summer of 2026. That's the sticking point. Now, if he plays so damn well the next 2 years, he won't, and he'll opt out and get a bigger contract. But it's a risk. And my point would be this, and I think you guys feel the same way. Like, shouldn't we see where Kawhi Leonard's at before we talk about doubling down or tripling down or quadrupling down once again with this group, with this core? Shouldn't we get a long sample size of if Kawhi can stay healthy this season before we commit to bringing in a third guy again? Like, that's where I'm at.
It's funny you bring that up because you listened to our show, Matt, or Adam rather, and you heard what Matt and I talked about. And that was possibly trading a guy like Kawhi Leonard if things went downhill in a hurry. And that's when you could play the youth movement, by the way, is down the stretch, because you would get a first round pick and then some for a guy like Kawhi Leonard if you traded him in, let's say, around January or so. So we'll see what this team does. But what happens if Kawhi Leonard comes back and immediately goes back on the sidelines and LaVine gets hurt again, and you've traded away all those assets to get LaVine, all the remaining assets you had? LaVine is hurt. Kawhi Leonard's not coming back this season. You're left with James Harden and Zoo basically as your team. So you're not only going to lose games, but then you have no assets. I just think that you really put yourself in a bad position moving forward if you make this trade. You need all things to work out. Yes. Is it most likely that things will work out like that? No. They're the Clippers. Things don't work out perfectly ever for the Los Angeles Clippers.
Feels like that right now. Matt, do you concur with your radio partner?
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about it. You know, Kawhi Leonard, potential trade candidate. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say, but if things really go sideways, I mean, can you really rule it out? And, you know, bringing in Zach LaVine kind of puts you in an even stickier situation than the Clippers are in right now, with the balance between youth movement, the old guard, winning, losing, because Zach LaVine, as great of a player as he's proven to be, hasn't really, you know, contributed all that much to winning. And so if the Clippers are now just hamstrung by another huge salary, and like you mentioned, a player option, and you've traded away assets, like how do you move forward? You know, I think the Clippers not signing Paul George and then trading for this huge contract with Zach LaVine it wouldn't make all that much sense to me personally. So it'd be exciting, right? Like it put some butts in the seats, but other than that, I don't know.
Matt Matawaran and Brandon Marcus are our guests from Talking Ships here on a Clippers Talk Live. If you guys have some questions, as I do here, you mentioned trading Kawhi. Everybody keeps saying, could they Blake Griffin Kawhi? Could they blindside him with the trade? I don't think they can do that at this point. I don't think they can do that a second time and do it to the guy who really chose them and made them a destination franchise. I think he means more than what he's able to do when he is available on the court. He's symbolic of them transforming into a place where superstars want to come. Everybody was after him in the summer of 2019, and the Clippers landed him. All the reports saying he's going to the Lakers.
It wouldn't be a blindside. I don't think it'd be a blindside.
You're saying the mutual?
Yeah, I think if the Clippers are losing games, why would he want to stick around? It's just one of those things where I think it makes sense for both parties. Where, I mean, he's already shown that obviously he's late in his career. He's talked about it, and all he wants to do is win and be ready for the postseason. If the postseason is not really going to be a realistic option, then wouldn't it make more sense for both parties? Because the thing that you've talked about, Adam, and the thing that Matt and I have always talked about is that whenever you have Kawhi and PG, you're in win now mode. And here we are again with Harden and Kawhi. And it's weird to say that you're not in win now mode, because if you have Kawhi Leonard, you're not rebuilding with Kawhi Leonard. Like, that's just not something you do, because he only has a couple of years of strong play left, if that. So the question is, what are you doing? Because if you're going in win now with Kawhi and Harden, then what else do you have? That's where I mean that they're right in the middle, and really has been the theme of what we talked about today, is that they can't really go to one side or the other side as long as you have Kawhi, because they're not good enough to compete with Kawhi right now because he's hurt and they don't have a ton of pieces, and they're not bad enough because Kawhi Leonard's too good on his own. So that's where I say it's a mutual kind of thing where I don't think they would blindside him, because there's no reason to. It'd be more of a, hey, we're not winning games. And if we're not winning games, then we're going to trade you, because if they're winning games, they're not going to trade him. That's obvious. So I think it'd be in a situation where they're losing more games than they expected, and that's when you would trade him.
I guess the conundrum to me is, if he's healthy and playing, they're not going to be losing games. So, like, how do you trade him if you're losing games? Because that likely means he's not playing. So then what are you getting back for him if he's still not available? How do you move the contract unless he is healthy for a stretch and playing? And therefore, you're probably winning games. Like,
are you sure? Are you sure they're winning games?
He has what?
I don't know if
second highest career win percentage in the regular season ever. Like,
I mean, if you take away that 26-5 run that they had with Harden, PG, and Kawhi, it's obviously a big stretch. It's 31 games, but they had PG in that time. So who's taking that PG role now? Like, I think there's a chance where they're winning games, but they're not winning enough in order to be that top 4, top 5 team in the West. And so that's why I think you could possibly trade him. I get what you're saying, Adam, but let's say he sits out for the first month of the season, and then all of a sudden the Clippers get him back, and he shows that he's healthy and they're winning some games, but it's still too late for them to actually make a big dent. Then who knows? I don't think it's likely. Yeah. I'm just saying it's something that could possibly end up happening. I don't think it's likely. I'd be surprised if it ended up happening this year. But you're wondering about whether this team is going all in, and if you're going all in, then you get a guy like LaVine. We said it last year. That's why you get James Harden, because you're going all in. You have PG, you have Kawhi. You're trying to win now. That's why you get James Harden. It made perfect sense. Are you going to try and do that again? Because if you try and do that again, then it has to work. And I just don't know if it will work.
No, it's a fair point. If you're in such a hole because he doesn't start the first month of the season, and then you get him back and you're trying to dig out of it, but you're still not winning 80% of your games or anything like that to do so, then maybe he's healthy and you're winning, but you're not able to climb back into what looks like a top 5 seed in the West. Matt, you were saying?
Well, I was going to say it's unfair to compare a potential trade, and this is such like pie in the sky, but a potential trade to Kawhi to Blake, because Blake was drafted by the Clips. He had the whole thing. We want you to be here and retire here. Kawhi, not that he is, but he could be a little bit considered a gun for hire, maybe if he also wanted to move on. But I also don't think it's likely at all that the Clippers would trade Kawhi, though it's not something that can be completely taken off the table. But on the flip side, if Kawhi does come back and they start winning and he's looking good and James is looking good and Zoo and so on and so forth, like, okay, we're not going to win the championship this year, but we do see that Kawhi can play at an elite level still. So can Harden. Yes, they'll both be a year older next year, but could we keep them and then sort of try to fill in even more around the edges to maybe next year have a higher chance of competing? So trading him is not necessarily the best option, but I don't think it should be a non-starter.
It does seem like a fluid situation where they have some flexibility because of contracts outside of Kawhi, where they can wait and see for a little bit what direction this team is going, because James Harden is basically on a 1-year deal. He's likely going to opt out. He makes $35 million this year. He's got a player option for $35 million next year. And then You either get $35 million off the books going into next year for a team that's already under the first apron, or you end up paying him because you feel like you can make one more run at this. To Matt's point, if they do look like they can stay healthy, if Kawhi does look that good, or you get to the trade deadline this season, and if Kawhi looks really good, maybe you pull the trigger for making a big move with bringing in, I don't know, somebody else who can be that third guy or supplement some of the scoring that was lost from Paul George. I wanted to bring up this sound because you guys talked about it a bunch. And I wasn't sure, and a lot of people have seen it different ways with Kawhi Leonard. This was halftime in Honolulu, him speaking with the media, and a certain juicy quote that came out there regarding his teammates and if anybody has stood out to him. And I want to play it in its entirety and see if you guys still feel the same way you did on the recent podcast on Talking Ships about it. Because I didn't interpret it as anything close to shade, but I see why people could say that. So here it is.
Who has kind of stood out for you during this week of training camp practices?
I mean, just the new guys, just watching them. The new additions we have from Chris Dunn to Derrick Jones Jr. To some of the young guys that we brought in and with Kai Jones last year, and just seeing how they could develop. So just watching them from day one to day two to day three, just seeing their progression. But nobody stood out to me so far.
All right. Full quote, full context. You guys still feel the same way about it?
It's just a weird thing to say, man. Why go and discuss all those players and then be like, nah, man, nobody stood out. It's cool. Nobody stood out. Like, I don't understand it. It's weird. It makes no sense to me. And it's one of those things where Matt and I talked about it and we're like, why bother? Why say it? It doesn't make sense. There's no positive PR or anything whatsoever that can come out of saying something like that. Say what you just said about Kai Jones and Derrick Jones Jr. and the young guys and end your sentence there. There's no need to say that last sentence if nobody has stood out, because to you, you're basically saying, man, yeah, nobody's really stood out. Like, it's like, dude, why'd you just say all those dudes before? It just doesn't make sense to me. Hearing the full thing, by the way, it doesn't sound as bad, obviously, but it's just that quote. And in the age of media that we are in today, you say something like that, it's going to get pulled out. So I just still don't think it makes much sense. Was it harmless? No, I think there was a little bit of harm in there. I think that it hurts your team a little bit by saying something like that. Is that something that your leader says? No, it's not something your leader says. So I still don't like it.
I just see it as, is that something Kawhi would say? So maybe we shouldn't put too much into it, because he just wanted to put a button on at the end because the question was, did anybody stand out? He's like, no, nobody stood out. But he mentioned guys right before that. I don't know, Matt?
Okay, so first, Halftime in Honolulu is a great name for, I don't know, some sort of show or band or something. Halftime in Honolulu was awesome. But you know what it kind of reminded me of, hearing and watching the full clip? When Brandon and I do our show Talking Ship on the Old Man Squad Network, a lot of times, and you guys will be shocked to know this, but I'm not exactly the most prepared for when we go on air. So Brandon will ask me a question. So what did you think of last night's box, or break down the box score for me? And I'll be like, well, I think, who can I remember? Derrick Jones Jr. did well. Who else can I remember? The young guy, Kai Jones, Chris Dunn. It sort of sounded like he was just like, oh God, I'm not prepared and I haven't been paying attention at all to what's going on. We signed Dunn, Derrick Jones. Kai Jones is on the squad. Can't remember anybody else. But nobody's impressed me. It almost sounded like it was caught him off guard and he was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of felt like what you said on the pod, Brandon, with not wanting to elevate one player above the rest. He didn't want to show maybe favoritism to highlighting just one guy, because it could come across that way. And then that one guy gets a question. Hey, Kawhi said this about you. I could see it that way a little bit too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I could see that for sure. And the quote we have, or the message here from Alfonso, I get it. I mean, yeah, you're right. Kawhi is not about PR or putting out quotes to send a message. That's who he is. At the same time, like, you need to have a leader on a team if you want to win ball games. And usually your leader is one of your top couple players and is usually available. And Kawhi just hasn't had the availability at key times. And when he does open his mouth, which is very rare, and when he actually talks, you can't say something like that. But yes, like I said before, it could easily be I don't want to elevate one person above somebody else. I just don't think he's very savvy when it comes to the media. And you said, sure, it's Kawhi being Kawhi, but man, I'm getting tired of this Kawhi being Kawhi nonsense because I'm tired of the injury reports ever since Kawhi's come along. I'm tired of how the media gets talked to from time to time ever since he's come along. The wins haven't come along. So yeah, I'm getting tired of it.
I get the frustration. Let's discuss finally here what the starting lineup could be opening night if Kawhi's not available. Because we had a conversation 2 weeks ago on here, and I was of the mindset that if you don't have Kawhi, Norman Powell is going to be in the starting lineup. Yeah. He's played and started in 2 preseason games, wasn't available Friday night for that one with a back injury. I know you guys brought this up as well on Talking Ships. Matt, do you feel like Norm is going to be the guy that gets the nod for a little more scoring punch if Kawhi's not there opening night?
I was actually pretty dubious about that. I have to apologize. There's an episode of Breaking Bad that's called The Fly. It's one of the most divisive episodes. There's a fly in this room that is driving me absolutely insane. I'm trying not to lose it, but I got my little zapper here and everything. I'm looking for this guy. Anyway, that's
great episode, man.
That's a great episode. I love it, but a little bit divisive from Breaking Bad fans, from what I understand. I was a little dubious about Norm joining the starting lineup should Kawhi not be in, but I think I've sort of shifted that just from his play, but also just from his talk about leadership, being that dog again on the defensive end and all that kind of stuff. So I could see him coming in, and I also predicted Batum would opening night. But having watched some of those preseason games, I think now I'm actually leaning more towards DJJ, and I think that would be the way that the Clippers would go. That's where I'm standing today.
Brandon, what's your opening night starting lineup best prediction? Not what you want to happen, but what you think is going to happen, I guess.
I don't remember. Oh, wait, that's Ty Lue when you ask him if somebody's hurt and how long he's going to be out for. Are we sure that Norm Powell is going to be ready opening night? Like, are we sure about that? Like, we're talking right now as if he's healthy and it actually is indeed minor, because I thought that Kawhi Leonard's injury was minor in the postseason and he was day-to-day. And a couple of years before that, he was minor. I don't trust this team when it comes to injuries. I just don't. And so if Kawhi, or rather if Norm Powell is healthy and Kawhi is not ready for opening night, I think you will end up being correct. And I think Norm Powell will start. And I think he'll start in place of Nico Batum and from the lineup that I gave previously. So I think it ends up being James Harden, Terrence Mann, Derek Jones Jr., Norm Powell, and Zoo. I think that ends up being the starting lineup. I think DJJ plays the 4 rather, and that's how your starting lineup goes. But again, I don't remember. Why do we need to say I don't remember? It's the preseason. If somebody is actually has a minor niggle, as they say in soccer, if he has a minor niggle and he's going to be back next game, then just say he's got a little minor back thing. He'll be back next game. There's no reason to say I don't remember what the injury is and how long it is. That's why I don't trust it.
I understand. It can be frustrating at times. You guys did.
Sorry, we've got 2 preseason games left. I think Mark brings up something in the chat here about bringing KPJ into the starting lineup for one of those preseason games. Guys into that?
I think it's probably happening.
He may get suspended, right? Do we even know if he's going to be available for game 1?
Yeah, we still don't know with the investigation.
I could see him that by now we would have heard about a suspension, right? You can't just hand it down a week before the season when a team isn't practicing during the preseason trying to get ready for game 1.
I'm guessing it could come at any time. Like, I don't think there's any structure to the timeline of when they have that perfect sweet spot of when they can throw down a suspension. I don't know. People are bringing up Miles Bridges and him getting 10 games last season, but then he also missed a certain amount the year before. And I don't know if there's a lot of structure to it. So it feels nebulous. I don't know with KPJ. Could he still start in the preseason if he's available, though, to that point? Yeah, I think there's a good chance.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked. You guys talked about him. I like some of the stuff you said with him being one of the shot creators on this Clippers team. Like, he can be very valuable for them this season because they don't have a lot of that, Brandon, and KPJ does.
Yeah, they need scoring. I mean, especially if you're going to have Norm Powell in the starting lineup, then you really don't think you can have KPJ in the starting lineup too, because if you do, then you're really going all out in that starting lineup and you don't have much coming off the bench at all. So would it be nice to have a Kevin Porter Jr. off the bench that can do everything and can kind of be that juice and that energy? Yeah, absolutely. Because if you're going to bring Nico Batum, he ain't going to have the juice off the bench. You bring Mo Bamba or Kai Jones, he ain't going to have the scoring juice off the bench. I mean, you just have these guys you're bringing off. Chris Dunn, not going to have the scoring juice off the bench. You need to have somebody that's going to score the basketball if you're going to start Norm Powell. And if you're going to start Norm Powell, then you have to have Kevin Porter Jr. There off the bench. Because let's say Kevin Porter Jr. does get suspended. Then what's your bench look like if you start Norman Powell? Like, that's where
if
really
Bones is still on the team, maybe he gets run then, you know?
Yeah, listen, Bones is going to get a chance to do whatever he wants. Russell Westbrook should wish he should have stayed. He'd be able to do whatever the hell he wants in that second unit. But yeah, that's the thing. I would like to see Kevin Porter Jr. do something and play. But like I said, I mean, he was good at USC. Like, he's a good ball player, and he has put up numbers when he plays. It's just the off the court stuff.
Your confidence in KPJ, Matt?
It's pretty low. I do think he's also a Razor Ramon type who oozes talent, and you can kind of see it pouring out of him onto the floor. Now, does he have the basketball smarts? We know he most likely doesn't have the off-court smarts to sort of rise to a level that we would hope. But for a preseason game, sure, why not throw him into the starting lineup and see what he wants? Because Brandon's right. The Clippers are going to need some sort of scoring punch, some shot creation, just somebody that can do something with the ball, because I keep talking about how the defensive prowess of the team this year, and that's sort of the identity. But if you don't put any points on the board, you can stop. You're not going to stop the team on every other play. So you got to score on the other side of the court, and KPJ could very well help in doing so.
And I think it's underrated, but scoring can also aid your defense. You put in shots, you can set your defense on the other end. And with how good this Clippers defense has looked so far in the preseason, when they're in the half court and not scrambling in transition to get back off of bad turnovers, because the first two games they averaged 20 of them, that would be pretty big for this team. Like, they still have to execute on the offensive end. Those two things work hand in hand for their defense to really be at an elite level like we think they're capable of if everything goes right. KPJ is one of the few guys to me that could play a little bit on both ends. He has to show it more defensively, but he could be someone later on in the season where I wouldn't be shocked if he got starts, because he gives you a little bit of both. He gives you shot creation. He's a great catch and shoot three-point shooter. The last 2 years in Houston, he shot 48% and 44% on catch and shoot threes, like crazy stuff. So playing off of James Harden, that could work. And then with his length and size, he should be, if he wants to be, a consistent, decent defender on the perimeter. We talk about that with Norm trying to improve there. KPJ can as well, and that changes a lot for this Clippers team. It's still, you're asking a lot right now with a young player like this. Off the court issues as well.
You bring up a good point, Adam, and it's not something that a lot of people have mentioned, and frankly, we haven't mentioned it either, is that you can be as good as you want defensively, but if you're bad offensively, you're probably not going to have a good defense, because that means if you're going to be 20th, let's say, offensively, you're not going to end up being top 10 defensively, most likely, because that means that you're not contributing the ball into the hoop, which means you're getting your chance to have your defense set. Because if you're not doing well offensively, that means you're missing shots and the team is getting out in transition because they're getting the basketball off the rim and running. And so that's the issue, is that if your offense is bad, then your defense, as good as you might be on paper and as hard as you work defensively, still might not come through the way you want it to.
He's Brandon Marcus. We got him and Matt Matawaran on. Guys, it has been fun once again. Clippers Talk Live this time on here. Matt, where can they find you? Where should they be subscribing and following your show, Talking Ships?
Talking Ship, a Clippers podcast. You can find us across all platforms. On Twitter or X, I'm at Matt Matawaran. My co-host here at BD Marcus. Definitely follow us. The Old Man Squad network is where we are housed at this moment. And you can find me crying my eyes out at about 9:30 tonight after my auction draft in my main basketball fantasy league.
Hey, wait, before we go, I want to put up Festus's comment because I do want to address it really quickly. And it's funny because people who have listened to Matt and I's show will certainly have this impression of me from time to time. I'm not going to sugarcoat the way I feel about things. If I'm pissed off about the injury report and how I'm being tricked as a fan, I'm going to say it. And in this case, Kawhi Leonard's an incredible basketball player. He has done some amazing things on the court when he is healthy. The Clippers have had a chance to win an NBA title because of him, but he has not been available in key moments. And that's why Paul George left, in part because the Clippers just needed to figure out a way to move forward as an organization. But if Kawhi, PG, and Harden are all healthy, they could have easily gone. And they showed in that 26-5 run that they had a chance to win it all. I'm just tired of being tricked as a fan when it comes to injuries and being told in 2 different postseasons that Kawhi is day-to-day when he's not day-to-day and he's having knee surgery and he's probably going to be out several months. Like, you know that about somebody. So I'm tired of being tricked as a fan and having people pay money, watching fans pay money only to be fooled an hour and a half before tip when a guy's being ruled out. So that's why I just don't want to be a fan of an organization that tricks you. I'll always be a fan of the Clippers, but just the way they're treating their fans right now is not something that I'm down with.
I understand wanting to set the record straight there. I would point out that I don't think it's as unusual, especially in a playoff series, to have some gamesmanship and not say a guy is out the rest of the series. But I understand what you're saying, too. It's been unbelievably bad luck with the Clippers the last 5 seasons, and everybody.
I don't hate Kawhi at all. I think he's an amazing basketball player, and I wish he was healthy, because if he was healthy, the Clippers win more games, and it's always fun watching a winning team as opposed to a losing team, especially when you don't have to do draft picks for the next several years. So I'd like to see them win and not see Jalen Williams and other good players go to organizations because of a trade.
And it's been incredibly bad luck, Adam. You're right that the Clippers have had, I mean, pretty much throughout the history of the franchise. But as luck would have it, brought the 3 of us together, all the listeners of Clippers Talk and Talking Ship and beyond. So we can at least hang our Clippers hats on that.
I appreciate you guys for coming on. This has been another episode of Clippers Talk Live. We're doing it 7 days a week now. Basically, that means
you're nuts.
On day, we got some pregame show for you. We got a couple of postgame shows for you on this channel here on YouTube at Clippers Talk. And if it's an off day, we'll have great guests like Brandon Marcus and Matt Matawaran on from Talking Ship. For both of these guys, I'm Adam Moslin. We are out. Thanks for watching.